Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial quarterback. Whether you've had years of success in your business or are just starting out, DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family and guide you toward the fulfillment of that goal. As they say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your virtual family office. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I am not ready for winter.
Seriously, right?
I know. It's that first cold, Yeah. It's so right now here it was about 27 degrees this morning. Wind's blowing, so with the wind chill it feels like 19. And that first cold of the year, you're just not quite acclimated yet. So it's I'm not ready for it.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I think south is where I want to go.
Yes.
Someplace warmer.
Isn't that the truth? Although I will say that my son moved up during COVID. He's basically came up here because he was stuck in Gainesville, Florida by himself. And then I just had another client that moved from St. Pete's to Pittsburgh. They were like, boy, we really missed the cold. So hey, who knows? I guess different strokes for different folks.
Seriously. Maybe we need winter, summer home things. You can split your year and live half and half, something like that.
Exactly.
That'd be fine. I hear
you.
I just need
I'm okay.
Island.
I'm like an RV. I'll follow this. I want an RV and I'll follow the sunshine. So
yes.
Yeah.
I just need the RV to get on an island.
There you go.
Yeah. Social distancing.
Right.
Oh my goodness. All right. So besides RVing and our futures, which we've talked about on previous podcasts too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we have.
What are we talking about today?
So if anybody listened to previous episodes, and especially episode 17, I had my guest Ron Delano on, and Ron talked about building culture in the business. And then in episode 18, we talked about this idea of creating your own personal mindset. So today, what I want to do is I want to tie this all together, and I want to talk about how I accomplish this with my clients and how we start with the family to start building this culture and this idea of a team around that. So as we're in the fall surge, we're doing a lot of the family meetings for some year-end planning. We're also now getting a lot of families that are starting to initiate these conversations. And if you've been listening to previous episodes, you know that the core philosophy of my business is that to truly build a successful life and business, you need to have a vision for what you want. I think a lot of that really comes down to we've got to create a culture starting with the family that then we can carry over to the business. This kind of all starts with this family meeting process that I've talked about. The key behind the family meeting is really for the family to start to get together. And what I do is I basically just act as the facilitator. So even when they're trying to start directing things to me, I'm always deflecting back to the family. I just want to kind of keep the conversation flowing and start to help them understand that everybody needs to be heard, and that they start to appreciate in each member and the intellectual and human capital that they bring to the table. And I'm sure, Eric, you probably see this in your family, that everybody's got kind of different talents and interest and different ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, for any business owner or even within families, period, not even just within a family-owned business, is being able to take the time and truly listen to what other people are saying, because you're going 100 miles an hour trying to run the business, and there could be some really good ideas out there. There could be some really good thoughts on just how to pivot or how to do something slightly different. And as a father, I know that I've made the mistake of not dismissing what my kids are saying necessarily, but not really taking the time to understand the gravity of what they've said, or to really say, okay, let's think this through and work this through, because I'm in a hurry to do something, get something done, get something accomplished, and I have my own train of thought. And it's when it's those times when we can just kind of put a pause. And that's why I like the fact that you're there to kind of not mediate necessarily, but you said facilitate.
Right.
But at the same time, you're kind of mediating sometimes, right? I mean, that's a big part of it.
Oh, exactly. It's the most amazing thing as I go through this process. It's really interesting because every family is a little different. So I have some families that there is a really good family bond and unity, but they've never really maybe come together as a family and talk. Maybe the husband and wife have talked, maybe the kids have talked to either just mom or just dad, but they've never come together. So as we start to come together, now all of a sudden it's like everybody's kind of being heard. But what you also start to see is you start to see some of the head trash that we talked about in episode 18, their personal mindset that starts coming out. Just to give you an example, I was recently doing one with one family, and we were talking about some problems within the business. The father started getting like really defensive about things. And it was like, he would start to go in these long explanations about why he was doing this. And I kind of had to stop him and say, okay, we understand that you have a certain process that you're going through, but what I want you to do is listen to what your wife and what your son and what your daughter are saying, and incorporate into this. We don't need necessary justifications. We're just looking to see where can we make it better. And so, but again, you start to see a lot of these things, and you've got to handle it gently because, again, you're in a group setting. It's not like if I was by myself with them, I'd say, you know what? Okay, this is head trash that we're working on, and that's what I do with him in a private setting. I won't do that in the meeting. But it's amazing how you start to see these things come out, and then it allows me to more effectively work with them on an individual basis too.
Yeah, and I will say from my perspective and working with as many high-level producers in different businesses as I have,
right?
Us as men, there are some pride issues a lot of times, and I am guilty of that, right? And I'm not saying it's just men, but a lot of times we have issues thinking or finding out that there's something that we could be doing better because we've been running the show for a long time and we think we're doing great, and then all of a sudden there's some other ideas out there. Wait a second. We get a little defensive and a little prideful, and I have to take a step back and breathe, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I do a Facebook Live every Sunday with my pastor, and we're last night we were talking about this, and we were talking about some of the differences between men and women, and how women are much more in tune with their inner self, their inner world. Men, we're horrible at that. And I won't get into the whole theology thing about it because it gets pretty deep. But anyway, and it's true. And I think in some ways, and I think we learned this when we did the women's panel, the last two episodes, that is maybe a skill set that women are much better at. And this is what I'm finding is doing these family meetings is that all of a sudden now the wife who maybe didn't have a lot of input into the business is now getting some and really bringing a lot of valuable capital to the table.
Absolutely.
And a lot of this process, and I'm going to kind of highlight what we talk about, and I'm going to come out in full disclosure, I stole all of this. I stole everything about it. And it's awesome. Actually, the process is actually, I follow, Pat Lencioni wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And this is where I pulled a lot of this stuff. And what I found was I can apply this to the family too, because really a family is just like an executive leadership team in a business, maybe even more so because there's more emotional and emotional connection there. But what I'm finding is in these family businesses, if we can lay the groundwork with the family, it then makes it much more easier to duplicate this in the business and now get those people to the leaders that we pull out as part of the leadership team in the business. We have much more congruency because the business owner is now doing it in every aspect of his life. What I'll do is I'm going to kind of use an example of one of the families I work with. Again, I'm not going to name any names. These are some real life examples. I think the first step in this whole process is what happens. And I've had this with other families. So we kind of come together and it's like pulling teeth to start getting the conversation started. And dad's kind of dominating the conversation. And I'm just looking at everybody else, and the wife and the kids are just kind of sitting there. And so then I'm trying to get them engaged. And sometimes all of a sudden it's like, you can feel there's this tension, but nothing's really coming out. Mm-hmm. That's really that signals that the foundation of the team is fractured, and that bottom part, and you got to think of this as like a pyramid. So this is the bottom part of the pyramid, and what there is there's an absence of trust among family members. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, when we have an absence of trust, what that the result of that is there's this what we call invulnerability, that people are not allowing themselves to become vulnerable and to kind of open themselves up. If I sense this in a family meeting, I know the first thing we got to do is start building trust. And this may get ugly. It may be having to open some wounds, but the more we start kind of working at this, I can start, and they start to become vulnerable. Now, all of a sudden, they start to open up and they start to listen, and they can start to appreciate each other. Now, I've had other families where this is not an issue, and there is a good sense of trust. And so they can start to become vulnerable. And, I was giving the example of the business owner who all of a sudden this mindset was starting to reveal itself, some of his vulnerabilities, and his family was very supportive of that. And they were going back and saying, no, we're not trying to beat you up. Understand this. We care about you. We love you. All right. But we're trying to help too. We feel we have buy-in here too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, the first foundation. I'm hoping that's making sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
perfect sense.
Great. So once when we don't have trust, the result of that as we move up the pyramid is what we call fear of conflict, meaning that we don't want to engage, and we don't want to maybe disagree with each other.
Yep.
Okay. And here's the thing. People get so worked up about conflict, and conflict can be good if done in a productive way. But again, you have to have that trust that's there, because then when there's trust, you can have conflict, but you can still have harmony within the team. And when I say the team, I'm talking within the family, but this would also translate over into maybe a executive leadership team within the business.
Yeah.
And when you have that fear of conflict, all of a sudden there's like this artificial harmony. So you ever see families or organizations where you walk in and everybody's just like, hey, how you doing? We're all positive, but you kind of sense that something's not clicking.
Oh, yeah. 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 There's something behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what that is, that there was this fear of conflict. So what they do is they create this artificial harmony to make it look like everything's hunky-dory.
Mm-hmm.
I remember years ago, we were in our family, we were going through some challenges, and my sister came to me. She said, I don't understand. I always thought we were the Brady Bunch. And I looked at her and I said, no, we've always been a little bit of the Addams family.
That's a good contrast.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think more families are like that, but I think the more they can learn this process, they can start to learn to cope. And then again, by allowing themselves to become more vulnerable, to start having trusting in each other, they can start to have healthy conflict.
Yeah.
So the third step, when we have this fear of conflict and we've created this artificial harmony, the third result of this is a lack of commitment. And so we're not committed then to the goals that we set as a family. So what happens is the family may come together, but again, if they don't have trust and they're afraid to have conflict and they've created this artificial harmony, they'll say, yeah, we're going to do this. And then they all go off and do their own thing.
Exactly.
With their own families.
Yep.
Okay. And again, that creates ambiguity, because now it's like mom and dad, let's say, for example, we're saying, well, I thought we resolved this and I thought this is what we were going to do as a family. Why is everybody doing their own thing? Because nobody made the commitment.
Well, I mean, they agreed to placate, right? They agreed
Yes.
to make everybody happy. In every family, there's usually one peacekeeper, right? And
Right.
a lot of times a peacekeeper is somebody who wants to smooth things over with the best of intentions. However, a lot of times that smoothing over is just kind of filling in the gaps, if you will, of things that are with kind of those fake niceties, the fake peace that's happening, and everybody's happy now, so everything's okay, and then we all go our separate ways. And then it
Right.
just doesn't get done. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that nobody wants to stand up to the most bold person in the room. And the
Right.
most bold person in the room is usually the business owner or the father
Yes.
figure or whoever's really been the driving force, because they've had to be that driving force, and it's just in their nature now. And it's very difficult to overcome that, and it's really difficult for somebody who's in that position to look back at other generations, their children or even their grandchildren, and say, why aren't you more bold? Why aren't you more outgoing? Why don't you have more tenacity? Well, they forget that they had to learn all that over the last 2 or 3 decades as they became business owners. And they didn't start off with that kind of boldness. They started off kind of working their way into what they became. And it's hard to reflect sometimes.
That's probably the biggest thing. Again, that whole idea of not being able to reflect. And I think what happens is then, even let's say a kid is coming up in the business and they have an idea. A lot of times, the business owner, because they have experience, they immediately dismiss what that idea might be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We tried this, and not to say that that's not a valid reason, but what the message that sends that person is, I don't value your opinion.
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, what does that do? That then deteriorates the trust, which means now all of a sudden the kid's not going to bring any ideas to the table, or he's not going to say, Dad, I think we should do something this way. The more this happens, the more we start eroding the trust, which then doesn't allow for productive conflict, which then means that now they wonder why the kids aren't as committed as they are. Mm-hmm. Well, because they have no buy-in.
Yep.
They have no buy-in.
And then when the kid does become bold enough to say something, so, Dad says, no, we've tried that before. And if the child, daughter or son answers back, well, when was the last time you tried it? Oh, all of a sudden they're arguing. No, they're not arguing. They're trying to find out. Look, well, no, we tried that like 10 years ago. Well, Dad, that was 10 years ago. Things have changed.
Yes.
We can try something again or try something in a different way, but don't stop the conversation, for crying out loud.
Oh, exactly. I see that a lot, especially in the automotive industry, which is kind of where I focus a lot of my attention. Most of these guys, they're grinders. They built this business, but they're not huge technology guys, and they don't use a lot of social media. And so a lot of times kids will come up and say, hey, I got this idea to start utilizing social media, doing Facebook ads and these type of things. And it's immediately dismissed because the parent has a preconceived notion of what social media is all about.
Yep.
It's just a place for people to complain and show pictures of their pets and their kids and just complain about the other political party. But they miss where the opportunities are in those areas. And the kids, just having been involved in that, see that. But again, there's that disconnect because of, again, some preconceived notions that the parents may have.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
So anyway, because then after we don't have this lack of commitment, what happens is there's an ambivalence of accountability that nobody wants to take accountability anymore for anything. And what that immediately does is creates low standards. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden it's like we start to all of a sudden accept that we're not achieving the things that we want to achieve. And again, when we have low standards, then there's an inattention to results. And that's really the peak of the pyramid. And what it does is it becomes about status and ego. And we see this, this filters down whether it's in a business or especially in a family, where then a lot of times the owners are wondering, well, why aren't we achieving what we want to achieve? Well, it all flows down to the beginning of the bottom of the pyramid, that we have to start with building that trust first. So it's kind of interesting, the dynamic, by starting this with the family and then starting to create more of a unity and this idea of them being a team. Now we're able to go in and start to do this in the business too. And now the family members feel like they have some sort of buy-in. Mm-hmm. So just for example, one family that I've been doing work with for a number of years, and we've done this. We have initiated this family process. We're building the team. We've identified the areas of weakness. We've been working on those. And now we're at a point where we're going to transition this to the business itself, because they have a culture business. And the interesting thing is it's funny, a lot of the key employees that I'm in touch with in that business, they've complained to me, but they've also complained to the wife. They've complained to the son. They've complained to the dad, who is the president, but they don't feel like they're being heard there. And so now we're taking these same principles and saying, okay, now we can apply this to the business. But now I also got the son that's involved. The wife is now feeling like she's a part of the business because she's helping to facilitate a lot of these conversations. And so you can see how your business your life becomes your business, and your business is your life. how that all works.
Yep.
So it's really a beautiful thing when it starts to come together. And I think, again, it gives us a foundation to then allow for, we've built trust, we can allow conflict, and we can start then to have commitments to be accountable to certain results that we want to have. And all of a sudden we start to see tremendous amounts of growth within the business, and the family feels much more unified.
Yeah. And I think that one of the most important pieces, and you touched on this before, is it's about people, right?
Right.
If you're putting your people, which is your family or even your employees first, how they're doing, so on and so forth, then it seems odd because, well, the business needs to come first because that supports everybody within the business. No. When you support the people, when you have the accountability and something's lacking, then you can go to that person when you have clear assignments and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? Right? What needs to get done? What is the stumbling block here? Mm-hmm. When you find those things out, the person feels cared about. They have better work ethic because of it. They have better work performance because of it. And the business will do better because you've concentrated on the person to say, what can we do to help you reach this goal? And it may be something very simple that needs to be shifted or fixed within a system or a chain of command. Yeah, I mean, once you have those conversations regularly, that's huge.
Oh, exactly. And, it's interesting because one of the questions I get asked is, and if I'm talking to people about these processes, whether it's a prospect or even just, friends of mine that, I might be discussing that, asking me what I do and talking about it. And they kind of look at me when we start talking about this whole idea with mindset, creating a vision for the family and teams. How does that fit into the financial planning aspect that you do? Mm-hmm. And my answer to them is that you can't get the financial plan right until you have first the client's mindsets right, and also the family's mindsets right, and this idea of working together as a team. Once you are able to do that, now you can start laying a foundation to create, and as I've said this before, my goal is to create multi-generational legacies, that we've not just creating something for this one generation and then they retire and it's like we just kind of ride them out till they die. No. We want to create a legacy that will take care of the owners and then also allow for a succession plan to the next generation and then to the next generations after that, and just kind of keep perpetuating everything that they've built.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
there's something about people want to have a legacy. I mean, I'm driving down the street and we have this community arts center that's there, and they're building this huge addition, and I had no idea what this addition was supposed to be, and they're almost completed with it. And I just saw the sign, and it's this I can't remember, it's like Josephine Paul Family Museum. And it strikes me that people want to see their name up on something. Yeah. That's a legacy for them.
Yep.
And that's something that burns deep within them. And when I can start to talk to families about creating something that will outlast them within their family, they get fired up.
Yeah. Anytime you can benefit future generations, even the ones you're not going to ever meet, I mean, that's huge. I think that everybody has that desire to help their family be that successful.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And the interesting thing is, too, that, and I don't want this to sound like that we just do one or a couple initial family meetings and then let it go. This is a regular process that we want to do. And so kind of where my goal is once all of a sudden we've got the foundation built, things are starting to click, we still want to have regular retreats. Whether it's always got to be offsite of the business. I mean, but sometimes I'm actually talking to some families about, hey, maybe we can incorporate this in your vacation. I can come down, for 1 or 2 days just to help facilitate a meeting. Because again, I've said this before, once you get outside your environment, you kind of free up your subconscious mind to be able to think creatively.
Yeah. And I love that idea.
Oh yeah, you've got to get out of your environment. But then what we can do is, because I've kind of trained them, they can also create their own regular meeting processes. So I don't have to be there all the time. I might have to only be there once a year or twice a year to maybe on a larger meeting, but they can still have regular monthly meetings as a family, maybe just the core members, maybe just the husband, wife, and maybe the kids. You know, the family meeting might incorporate spouses, it might incorporate, you know, grandchildren, depending on where people's ages are, where they kind of are in the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really, I mean, you know, I think that's really the first key step. We're having a ton of success with this process. And like I said, I have to give a shout out to Pat Lencioni for his 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. There's also some great books out there on culture. There's one I refer clients to from William Vanderbloom called Culture Wins. And again, it's about this idea of developing culture within your business, but it can also be incorporated with your family. And then Matthew Kelly also has a great book about culture that kind of talks about this more on, again, maybe a little more on a spiritual level too, but it is a business book. So those are some resources if anybody's interested in those, and I'm sure you can find those on Amazon.
Yeah, this is a lot of great content. Matt, I know that you've offered free time to anybody who wants to schedule some time with you just to chat about stuff like this. Can you kind of give your contact information again on how that's done? Yeah,
the easiest way is to go to my website, DiFranceso.com. And again, you'll find this in the show notes. And you'll see on the top right-hand side, it'll say schedule a free, no obligation strategy session. Click on that. Perfect. You can get on my calendar. I give everybody 20 to 30 minutes of my time to discuss your situation, see if there's a way that I can help you. Even if I can't, the one thing I always promise is that I will point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So schedule a time to talk. You can also download my white paper, the top 5 moves every business owner must make for a successful business and a higher quality life. That will give you some key steps. But I would recommend, if you do that, then schedule a time to talk, because then we can kind of look at your individual situation and see where we may be able to help you.
That's perfect. All right, Matt, again, thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. It's always a pleasure, Eric.
Yes, sir. All right. And the last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Matt comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or another qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, doing business as DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.